In July 1974, the Walls Unit in Huntsville, Texas, became the scene of an 11-day prison siege. 3 armed inmates seized a library and took hostages, demanding escape and protection. For 11 tense days, negotiators, snipers, and police faced a standoff that gripped the nation. This is the story of the Huntsville prison siege. 11 days of fear, bargaining, and a city watching the outcome. The loud crack of gunfire echoed through the air, shaking the concrete walls of the Huntsville Walls Unit prison. Dozens of officers ducked behind vehicles, their rifles aimed at the building's library wing. Inside, terrified hostages were forced to sit on the floor with their hands behind their heads. A voice from a loudspeaker shouted, "Put down your weapons and release the hostages." But the voice that answered was cold and confident. "Nobody moves until we get what we want." For 11 days, the Huntsville prison in Texas became the center of a national crisis, one of the longest and most dangerous hostage sieges in U.S. history. It all began on July 24, 1974. Inmates Fred Carrasco, Ignacio Cuevas, and Rodolfo Dominguez, armed with smuggled pistols, stormed the prison library, taking 15 people hostage, including librarians, teachers, and inmates. Their plan, to escape using the hostages as human shields. Carrasco, once a powerful drug lord from San Antonio, was no ordinary inmate. He was cunning, calm, and completely ruthless. Within minutes, he had turned the library into a fortress, barricading doors, setting traps, and making demands. Outside, Texas law enforcement flooded the area. Snipers lined the rooftops. Helicopters circled above, and reporters from across the country gathered just beyond the yellow tape. The world was watching. Inside, the hostages could hear the click of guns, smell the sweat and fear, and see the desperation in Carrasco's eyes. Negotiations began that same night. Carrasco demanded bulletproof vests, a getaway car, and safe passage out of prison. He promised not to hurt anyone if his demands were met. But everyone knew it wouldn't be that easy. Hours turned into days. Each morning, guards brought food to the barricaded door. Each night, the hostages prayed they'd live to see another sunrise. By the 5th day, the library smelled of exhaustion. The hostages were weak, terrified, and barely holding on. Yet Carrasco remained calm. He even let the hostages read, write notes home, and pray. To some, he seemed strangely respectful until he started testing their obedience. He warned them, if anyone tries to be a hero, everyone dies. That single sentence froze the room in silence. As night fell again, rumors spread outside that Carrasco had explosives. Inside, the prisoners began fashioning shields out of law books and tables. The guards knew something was coming, but no one knew when. The siege had entered its most dangerous phase, and everyone, inside and out, could feel it building towards something explosive. By day 8, temperatures hit nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The hostages were dehydrated and dizzy. Carrasco ordered the guards to deliver more water and fresh ammunition. It was clear now he wasn't planning to surrender. That night, the warden made one last plea over the loudspeaker. "Fred, don't do this. There's still a way out." Carrasco's response came sharp and final. "There's no going back." The words cut through the static, chilling every man who heard them. The 11th day was approaching, and everyone knew something terrible was about to happen. No one knew who would live through it. And then a loud crash echoed through the corridor. The power flickered. The final act had begun. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. Inside the prison library, the only light came from a candle stuck inside a coffee can. Hostages gasped. Someone whispered a prayer. Then a voice broke the silence, sharp, commanding, and deadly calm. "Stay quiet. It's almost over." Fred Carrasco looked at his men. Cuevas tightened his grip on the gun. Dominguez's hands trembled. They had reached their breaking point. And so had everyone else. Outside, officers thought the blackout meant an escape attempt. Snipers leaned forward, scanning every window. Reporters whispered live updates into cameras. Inside, Carrasco used the darkness to test his next move. He whispered to Cuevas, "Tomorrow we walk out, alive." That single sentence sent chills through the hostages. They realized he meant it. The next morning, Carrasco ordered the guards to deliver materials: duct tape, plywood, extension cords, and a roll of heavy tape. He told negotiators it was to protect the hostages. But inside, the truth was horrifying. He was building something to get them out. By noon, the plan took shape: a rolling shield made of metal panels and bookshelves, tall enough to hide 3 men and several hostages inside. Carrasco called it the box. The hostages worked quietly, hands shaking, every nail driven and echoed through the hallways. Some begged to be spared. Others stayed silent, too scared to speak. When the box was finished, Carrasco smiled, a cold, satisfied grin. It was nearly 7 feet tall and lined inside with mattresses. To anyone outside, it looked like a barricade. But Carrasco planned to climb inside, using it as a moving fortress to reach the prison's front doors. The plan was madness, but it might just work. He would hide behind the shield with Cuevas and Dominguez, holding hostages in front as protection. The police couldn't shoot without risking innocent lives. Carrasco believed he'd outsmarted everyone. But time was running out. Food was gone. Water was almost gone. And the longer they waited, the more desperate everyone became. That night, one hostage tried to escape through a small window. A gunshot stopped him mid-step. The library fell silent again. By the morning of August 3rd, the 11th day, Carrasco sent word to the warden: "We're coming out today. Don't get in our way." Negotiators pleaded for more time, but Carrasco ignored them. He ordered the hostages to climb inside the box, binding their wrists to the frame with electrical cords. As police watched from outside, the prison doors opened slowly. The rolling shield moved forward, inch by inch, carrying hostages inside it and the gunmen hidden behind. From the outside, it looked like salvation, hostages finally being released. But officers quickly realized the trick. Carrasco and his men were inside. They couldn't risk shooting without hitting the innocent. The box rolled closer. 10 feet, 5 feet. Then, a sudden noise, a loud metallic clang, followed by screams. Someone had pulled the power again. The hallway filled with gunfire. In the confusion, bullets tore through the box. Carrasco went down first. Dominguez fell next. Cuevas screamed for mercy. When the smoke cleared, 3 inmates lay dead, 2 hostages fatally wounded. The siege was over, but the cost was unbearable. The world called it the 11-day siege. To the survivors, it was something else entirely. 11 days of fear, hunger, and helplessness. The state of Texas would never forget the moment when 3 men nearly walked out its most secure prison, behind a wall of human shields. And as the last ambulance left the prison yard that night, a single question hung in the hot Texas air: how did it go so far? The echo of gunfire slowly faded through the thick walls of the Huntsville prison. For a long moment, no one moved. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and burnt cloth. Then came a voice from the radio, trembling but clear: "The siege is over." Outside, officers lowered their rifles. Medics rushed through the gates, carrying stretchers and oxygen masks. Reporters pushed closer, desperate to capture the first glimpse of survivors. For 11 days, the world had held its breath. Now it exhaled, shaken and speechless. Inside the library, the scene was unbearable. Furniture lay splintered and bloodied. Books covered the floor, soaked in water and ash. The homemade rolling shield stood collapsed near the exit, its plywood torn apart by bullets. Among the debris, officers found the bodies of Fred Carrasco and Rodolfo Dominguez, both fatally shot. Ignacio Cuevas, the last gunman, was still alive, barely. He had hidden behind a fallen hostage, crying out for mercy as officers moved in. The surviving hostages were carried out on stretchers, their faces pale and dazed. One woman, librarian Julia Stanley, had not made it. She had been shot in confusion, her courage remembered by every officer who saw her that day. Her death became the symbol of what went wrong and what needed to change. As news spread, television screens across America lit up with a headline: "Texas Prison Siege Ends in Bloodshed." Reporters described it as the longest and most dangerous hostage crisis in U.S. prison history. But behind the cameras, the real story was about what led to it: overcrowding, corruption, and despair. The Huntsville siege wasn't born from madness alone. It was the product of a broken system. Investigators soon discovered how Carrasco had gotten his weapons, smuggled in through visitors and corrupt guards. He'd been planning the escape for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when it came, he didn't hesitate. The Department of Corrections faced fierce criticism. Texas lawmakers demanded answers, and soon the state began the biggest prison overhaul in its history. Warden H.H. Husbands, who had negotiated tirelessly throughout the siege, became both hero and target. He was praised for saving lives, but questioned for how the weapons got inside in the first place. In one interview, he said, quietly, "You can lock a man's body, but not his mind. And in here, desperate minds build a war." That quote would appear on newspapers across the country. Within a year, Texas built new security protocols, metal detectors, stricter visitation checks, and crisis negotiation training for guards. The Walls Unit was reinforced and remodeled, but the memory of those 11 days never faded. For years after, some of the surviving hostages could still hear the echoes of gunfire when they closed their eyes. And the name Carrasco became a symbol of how quickly power and humanity could collapse inside a prison. In 1981, Ignacio Cuevas, the only surviving gunman, escaped briefly during a prison transfer but was caught days later. He was executed in 1991, 17 years after the siege. His last words, "I'm ready." For the victims' families, there was no closure, only the quiet reminder that justice can't erase pain. The Huntsville siege ended nearly 50 years ago, but remains one of the most studied prison crises in the world. A story of fear, power, and survival that still echoes behind concrete walls. And in every Texas prison built since, you can still feel the lesson written in blood and fire. Never underestimate desperation.